So you said you're building the house from the ground up. Walk me through what it is it means to build from the ground up.
During COVID, we had no events and, all these conferences I used to attend and speak at and things like that. So I got bored and I went to the Chamber of Commerce and I registered one of my businesses as a construction company.
Did you really?
I did, yeah. Because that gave me the right to visit the professional construction stores.
So you learned all of this via YouTube?
Not only YouTube, but yeah.
Tell me, what was your biggest assumption going into starting this project?
My biggest fear was, what if I'm gonna do something structural on the house, or with the electrical wiring or with the plumbing, and then I'll have to cover it up for the next 30 years and it will have to work. And I made such stupid mistakes during the entire process, but I learned so much from them. And by now I'm confident.
Hello and welcome to the Ja-Nae Duane Show, where she explores the systems that shape human behavior and society through the eyes of technologists, scientists, executives, and leaders. From the algorithms that govern our digital lives to what the future of work will look like, we'll be taking a closer look at how these systems function and the implications they have on our lives.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Ja-Nae Duane Show. It is 2026. I had a little hiatus, and I am glad to be back. Steve Fisher and I were working on our next book, which I will announce in probably about a month or so. But I want to say that I'm super excited to kick off this new year with what I considered a very special conversation with a new friend. So today we will be diving into, to me, a profound frontier that we still don't know a lot about, or at least the things that we can do with this frontier, and that is energy, and how it powers, in my mind, possibilities for our future. So my guest today is Arash Azaami, and this a fun little fact: when I met Arash last year, we immediately clicked. When you meet someone, you're like, all right, I need to talk to that dude. And that was exactly what our immediate connection was like. So I'm glad I'm able to have him on the show today. And he really embodies this shift as we're thinking about energy and its possibilities. So Arash is a Persian Dutch entrepreneur and system inventor. I would consider him an energy architect, if you will, who really believes that energy, like information, should flow freely and equally to all. And his story actually begins in Nigeria, where he experienced an energy scarcity, if you will, firsthand. And so since his childhood, this has become part of what's shaped his life mission. And so as we talk throughout this episode, we talk about how energy can be redesigned as a living ecosystem, why mindsets really need to evolve, and as we're thinking about living in harmony alongside technology, what that might look like and how we could build that together. So with that, sit back, relax, and please enjoy a very fun conversation with Arash Azaami. So Arash is chewing because in true fashion.
Okay, time out. We're going to do this better.
No, we're not. It's fine.
Okay, good. 10 seconds. Give me 10.
Okay. We'll entitle this conversation, Arash is taking a bite, which won't make sense to the listeners and the viewers right now, but may later. Arash, by the way, thanks for joining me for this conversation. This is a long time coming in my mind. So how are you doing today?
Good. It's your morning. It's my afternoon. I'm here in Rotterdam in the Netherlands, and it's beautiful weather. I'm at home. it feels like a summer holiday, and we were just prior to this recording discussing the concept of being busy. And apparently, I'm doing all kinds of stuff, but it doesn't feel like it.
Yeah, so you said you're building the house from the ground up. So is this an older house that you bought? Walk me through what it means to build from the ground.
Well, it's yeah. Okay, so is it really from the ground up? Yeah, in a certain way, yes. It's an old house. So Rotterdam was very heavily bombarded during the Second World War. Um, and so that means that most of the inner city had to be rebuilt. And this house is just outside of the fire line, which means that it's from 1897. It's an old house. And I've been in this house for about 20 years, and I bought it as two apartments, and I put them together at some point, and it's just, it's become my place. And during COVID, we had no events and, all these conferences I used to attend and speak at and things like that. So I got bored and I went to the Chamber of Commerce and I registered one of my businesses as a construction company.
Did you really?
I did, yeah, because that gave me the right to visit the professional construction stores. The things that you need to. And I basically YouTube taught myself to build stuff. So I rebuilt one of the floors of the house, and I was partially happy with it. And I did all the wiring and all the plumbing and all the everything actually. And walls, I broke down walls and I built new walls and I made big mistakes and stuff like that.
So you learned all of this via YouTube.
Not only YouTube, but yeah.
Tell me, so this is really interesting. So I'm the daughter of a plumber. Tell me, what was your biggest assumption going into starting this project? And then I'd also love to know what was one of your biggest surprises, because it sounds like you've already done a tremendous amount of work on the house, though I know you're still working on it.
Yes, I am. So it's 3 floors, soon to be 4.
Of course it is.
So as I said, it's old. It's from 1897. And what I just did was on the top floor, I stripped everything down to the bare skeletal construction of the house and then rebuilt it from there. And that gave me the opportunity to insulate everything to today's standards, but with eco materials. So it's all wood fiber, sheep wool, stuff like that. And now I'm getting to the point where I'm going to finish it, which means it's going to be a living space again. It's going to be a studio and workspace. And my wife and I are sharing this house, and I have a bunch of guitars that will be finally put in a place where it's actually nice for them. So my biggest assumption was actually, I'll start with my biggest fear when I started this project. So I started it in 2020, 2021, something like that. And my biggest fear was, what if I'm gonna do something structural on the house or, with the electrical wiring or with the plumbing, and then I'll have to cover it up for the next 30 years and it will have to work. What if I did something wrong and after 2 years out of those 30, something happens that's going to destroy the entire place? That was my biggest fear. Actually, the biggest fear wasn't even in the plumbing, and I had some help with one of the old neighbors who was actually a plumber. So he helped me. But he really said to me, I'm going to be your help. It's not going to be the other way around. And that empowered me so much. And then the even bigger fear than the plumbing actually I had with with the electrical systems of the house. And, I work in energy. So I thought, I'll have to know this, right? It's not the theoretical stuff, not the PowerPoint stuff. This is the actual wiring that will have to work. And I made such stupid mistakes during the entire process, but, I learned so much from them. And by now I'm confident. So, and I think that's the biggest win. I actually learned during the process that, hey, I can do it. And there's so many other people that can do it. And the thing is, you have to follow logic. So yeah, it's cool.
I love that. For you, is there a specific way in which you learn? Because you were learning so many new skills during this process. is there a specific way in which you learn that you've taken over into this project, and or, a follow-up question is there a new way in which maybe either you've learned or you've explored mastery in taking on such a behemoth of a project?
So yeah, it's for sure it's not mastery. Uh, so but by now, here and there, people are starting to ask me to help them with their jobs, and I love it. And so I helped my brother tiling yesterday, for example. So I basically took a day off work and I tiled, and I love it. And the thing is, I'm educated as a musician. Musicianship or artistry in every sense has some unique qualities because they are both mentally and spiritually and physically. And what I've learned through this process is that by using my hands, I liberate my mind, and by using my mind and my heart, I liberate my hands. So for me, it is a quest to find a balance in life in a certain way.
Well, I love that, and I love it was actually your background as a musician that prompted the question initially. And for folks, since I want folks to get to know your background a little bit more. So you have a background in both music and technology. I would love for you to tell us a story of that journey, but then also how you ended up really getting focused in on energy, which is where you spend so much of your time right now.
Yes. Well, energy is the currency of the universe. It's everything that has ever changed or grown for the past 13.5 billion years, for as far as we can think of, has been through energy, with the help of energy. So eventually everything will end up in energy. Um, Career-wise, I took that turn in 2006. Prior to that, indeed, I studied music. I studied jazz guitar in conservatory in the Netherlands. I worked as a musician for a few years. I ended up as a musician actually in Silicon Valley in the late 90s. I was a firsthand witness of the dot-com rush, the gold rush of dot-com, at that time, which was amazing, and which also inspired me to go back home in the Netherlands and try and do something with the internet. And actually, the story actually has multiple layers because this is not coincidental. It's because my mother was an internet pioneer in the Netherlands.
Really?
Yeah. So she was one of the first to go online in this country. And she was rather activistic. She was very much in um, um, fighting for women's rights, for example. And this was a way for her to not leave her home and be in touch with the entire world that is, around that theme already. And she was hardcore. I mean, we had this 286 DX computer with a monochrome yellow screen. Some of the old viewers may still remember that kind of machinery, and a 14K4 modem, which was the squeaky that kind of. And
Yeah.
so we went online typing code. This was before the www. It was before we had graphic user interfaces. So that's how she did it. And she literally told me at some point, Arash, I'm fine with you playing outside so much, but you'll have to spend more time on a computer because I think this is going to be really big. And so, and I know that so many of the viewers, that they tell their kids the exact opposite, which proves my mother's point. It really did become something. In 1973, the internet itself had 36 users. At that time, it was still ARPANET.
Right.
This year, it surpassed 5.5 billion users. That's how big it became. And why did it become so big? Because it was de-nerded. It was de-nerded through protocols like the www protocol and HTTP and TCP/IP. So when I was in Silicon Valley as a musician, I was watching that, very closely. And I thought, this is what I want to do. One of my first domain names at that time, and I had no notion of the value of these things. And especially, I had no ability to extrapolate the potential effects of choices that I made at that time. But I purchased this domain name, at first, which was ej.com, because I figured, you have the DJ, and then in the time of MTV, you had the VJ, the video jockey, and then I think the next thing is going to be the EJ. It's going to be and so and I didn't know what to do with it. There was no bandwidth. There was no. So I kept it for a while and just let it go. And by now it's a huge streaming service and station. And I did a bunch of these things with friends of mine. And it wasn't called pioneering. It was just called playing around, tinkering. That's what we did. But we had fun doing it. We had no notion of potential value or you know, and the thing is with all these, especially if you're looking at technological revolutions that have a massive effect not only on how we use technology, but on how economies and societies work, is that I think that even the greatest visionary could only come so far as to extrapolate one or two or three of the parameters of these changes and have no notion of what all the other things are doing, which is, so you're going to have a massive shift in business models. Okay, what's it going to be? I cannot imagine. You're going to have a massive shift in how people work together. Yes, by now, in retrospect, we can actually attest to that, thanks to the internet. But with energy, we're actually undergoing the exact same thing right now. That's why I was drawn into energy in 2006. It's a long, long story how I got there. But in the end, I was severely burnt out. I had to rewrite my future from that point. I wasn't tech. I liked it, but I didn't love it. I wanted to do something purposeful. I decided to go camping on my own at some point, and I came to the conclusion it's either going to be energy or finance, because I do believe that both of them need a fundamental rewriting of what's underneath them, the design principles. And literally, I woke up in my tent one of those mornings. I got a phone call. It happened to be a headhunter who came with a proposition to me, who said, well, I've been following you for a while in tech, but I can see that you have nothing to do with energy, and still I want to invite you to pick up a role at an energy company. And I thought, okay, so that'll be it. It's going to be energy.
So you were already thinking either energy or finance at that time, and this was very much a signal to head in that direction. Is that correct?
Yeah, it was. I had a feeling at that moment that it was serendipitous. And
so I want to go back to two things. One, how does a musician find themselves in Silicon Valley and then make that transition? Because you were gigging at the time, if I recall, but I don't know if I know how that transition into, and maybe it was just playing around with your buddies who were also in tech in the Valley. But how did you decide to go from the Netherlands, because you were in conservatory there, and then end up in the Valley?
yeah, so what happened was I went to conservatory. I studied there. After a while, in the UK, they had these summer arts academy camps and these beautiful school campuses. I attended one of them as a student, actually picking up, just for the summer, picking up an acting class given by a comedian named Omi Jalili. And the next year, they asked me back to be one of the people accompanying their music track. So I went there as a guest, with a bunch of people playing music and accompanying young musicians to try and write songs and do cool stuff together. There was another guest musician there who came from the US. He came to me. We talked together. He said, I'm doing a gig tonight. You want to join? Just jamming. And I said, sure. We jammed. A couple months later, I got a letter. It was a written letter. If I come over to the US and tour with him. So I toured with him for about 2 years. So that's how I ended up in Silicon Valley, amongst other places. We were touring. So I was never somewhere for a long time, but there's a bunch of experiences. I mean, this has been, for me, it's been a formative and life-changing experience, traveling in a car, going coast to coast, making music every night, uh, meeting people, shaking so many hands, seeing all these sceneries, but also witnessing the cultural differences, traveling through the US, all the way from east to west and from west to east, back again over the south. So yeah, so there was um, I'm forever grateful for that experience. One of the beautiful experiences I've had there was that we were invited to spend a couple nights in a Navajo reservation in New Mexico, for example, which was,
Wow.
I felt so honored to be a first-hand witness of the dynamics in the culture there. And amongst that, we also got to meet the techies in the Bay Area and who were doing cool stuff. I came back to the Netherlands. I was already nerding at that time. I was already involved with computers and I knew some HTML and fooling around a little bit. And with two friends, we got together and said, okay, let's do it. Go to the Chamber of Commerce, register. So at that time, we were called E-Waves. You want to surf? We'll make you waves. It was, and the funniest thing. The company still exists, by the way.
Does it?
I left in 2002. They completely pivoted, but they're doing beautiful things, and we're still buddies. So the co-founders and I, we're even still in the same building, but they're international now. They're all over the place. They're in South Africa and Latin America, some other places. They're called Soul.com. And Soul.com is about organizational change and really helping leaders to find the soul, their own, and the soul of the company. They're doing beautiful, beautiful things. So, I still feel somewhat, I think, proud that we did the first tinkering and finding out stuff and making mistakes with those guys who I very, very highly value. So, yeah.
There's so many things that I love about that story. One, to stay friends with co-founders even after you've departed. I mean, it's so rare for me to hear that. So I always love and cherish when co-founders are able to have those conversations and split and be amicable about it. That's I wish more folks would have those hard conversations instead of trying to struggle along. The other piece that I really love about that story is I find that when you get out into cultures, into cities, into varying areas, you really get to understand how folks tick. And I mean, I had that from my own experience as an opera singer, but also when I started as a researcher, I was in a veggie van going across the US. I love that you've had a similar journey, but a very different one as well. I want to bring it back, Arash, to so you were in tech, ended up getting this call while you were camping from a headhunter to head into energy, and that has sort of set your trajectory for where you've been spending your time since. In researching you, I had come across this term, and I was hoping that you can explain it in your own words. Can you explain to the audience what energy Buddhism means in its essence?
Yeah, so it's one of the metaphors that have grown very close to my heart. And it stems from a by now deeply rooted belief system that has grown over the past 20 years that I've been active in the field of energy Buddhism. The thing is, when I started, so this was in 2006, I started with this energy company. It was a utility in the Netherlands, and they asked me, so apparently I was a guy that understood the first two chapters of Digital Tech 101. It's for dummies. But the thing was, at that time, still, if you'd read the first two chapters of that Internet for Dummies book, you were a guru. So in corporate land, it was amazing, and I never got further than those two first chapters, by the way. But the thing is, so I started with this energy company. I knew, I mean, my gut feeling in every way possible told me so much is wrong with this industry. It has to be redesigned. But that also is the perfect opportunity to be in a place where you can actually make a change. And I wanted to ask questions, and I did, and I learned so much in those years after. So I stayed with that company for 4 years after, before founding another company. For one, for example, the fundamentals of energy business, I think, are wrongly designed. Because in nature, all energy is about effectivity, and it's about distributedness in its essence,
Mhm.
and it's about, it's based from abundance of solar energy hitting the surface of a leaf of a plant, for example, and then converting that energy into a usable form for that particular plant, and then transporting it through its branches and to the root system, and then becoming part of the soil, and then being redistributed by mycelium. And, it's this whole diversity-based self-balancing system. Whereas in energy, we chose deliberately to go for, we need to have one controllable resource, which is ultimately a resource that somebody can plant their flag on, which is like an oil field or a gas field or something like that. And then we burn stuff, and then we distribute it in one-way traffic to users, and then we invoice them for it. And it was like, it just cannot work that way. It's by design, it's unsustainable. We know that by now. But not only that, it's also it's divisive by design, and it's extractive, and it's intrusive, and it's exploitative. So there was this point where I went to one of the directors of that company, and I basically dropped an idea there, and I said, why don't we go for flat fee energy? Because when we started with the internet, we had to pay a volume-based fee for our internet access. So the number of kilobytes that you upload or download, they were actually counted by somebody at the telco, and then you were billed for that. And I thought, well, so basically we're still in the 1980s for energy, and we have to go to a flat fee because it's not about the volume, it's about the value. And it's about the level of service that you provide. And I could see at that time already the prediction that more and more people would be enabled to more and more cheaply and easily produce energy, generate energy, share energy, transport energy, store energy, convert energy from one form into another. So I came with this concept of flat fee energy, and it was thrown away. It was a horrible idea. Never do it. And but I thought, that the marginalities in energy business are so much under pressure. Basically, an energy company in this day and age, a traditional energy company, can only turn a profit if there's a war. That's basically it.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Well, it's okay. I'm dropping. It's everybody do your own research. But over the past 100 years, over 90% of all international conflicts have been more or less rooted on energy conflicts, on conflicts over energy resources. I myself am a product of an energy conflict. I'm half Persian, Iranian, and half Dutch. The reason that my parents could meet each other had to do with the regime in Iran that exists because of oil concessions. There's a huge book by Daniel Jurgen called The New Map, which goes into this topic also, like how the stride for access to finite energy resources has been shaping how we draw our borders and maps, and how conflicts are there, and how some fragile balance in the world that is actually always based on inequality is being upheld. And in the meantime, the sun is owned by nobody, shines on our heads for free every day, and the wind blows through your hair, and water flows, and birds chirp, and whatever. It's all free. And I thought, okay, yes. So this has become really deeply ingrained in my own belief system as this is one of the fundamentals of the energy system. The more I looked at it, the more I came to the conclusion, just like in nature and in every universal system, everything is connected to everything else, which means that's how energy Buddhism came into my heart. It was like, we'll have to regard this as Buddhism. There's no owner, there's no boss, there's no central authority. Everything's connected. And the more people we can actually enable to be an active and contributing part to the system other than only being a consumer, the better. Because in the end, I believe that access to energy is fundamental. There's no form of value creation that you can imagine without energy being part of it, which means that we'll have to rewrite the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights because it does not include energy, but it does include a bunch of things that require energy. Education, healthcare, a roof over your head, they'll require energy. So why is energy not a human right? And I really believe it should be considered to be a human right.
For our audience members, now we understand why it's being podcast is being called that. I never really considered the role that conflict plays, or the role that energy plays when it comes to conflict. So I will definitely have to dig in more. So you had mentioned, is it Daniel Junger? Junger?
Jurgen.
Jurgen, thanks.
Jurgen.
Okay. I want to make sure that we'll put some links in the show notes for folks. So I'm very curious, is it energy Buddhism that really prompted you to come up with your benefits all stakeholders model? And can you also explain to the viewers what that model looks like, how you mechanize that in the work that you do? Because I found that model to be really interesting and something that I think a lot of people would also be interested in.
My God, you've done your research. Wow. Benefits all stakeholders. Yes, absolutely. So for me, that model is an old friend that needs reviving. So thank you for bringing it up.
My pleasure.
It's actually the other way around. Energy Buddhism has been a term that I've been wandering around with for the past few years. Benefits all stakeholders is a model that I designed in 2009. So that's 16 years ago now. The thing is, as long as we think that we have to create value by disadvantaging any stakeholder, we're always going to be unsustainable by design. So I very simply, at that time, I was preparing to launch my previous business, an energy company that I did believe, that wanted to go to the flat fee model, and that I had all kinds of adventures with, and that is actually on the verge of revival. Beneficial stakeholders or beneficial to all stakeholders is basically a list of the stakeholders that we can imagine as a business, and everybody can make it for themselves. We had 7 at that time. I could imagine 7 types of actors that would be influenced by the decisions that we made as a company. One of them being shareholders, which is obvious. One of them being our customers, which is also obvious. One of them being our employees. You don't want to make a decision that has a negative effect on your employees. Then the employees' families. That was one. So it's second tier, but just as important. If we say that we're good for our employees, but we deprive them of having a good amount of time with their families, then we're depriving families. So we shouldn't. Then there's suppliers. So many people in business think that they have to take advantage of a supplier because then, they're going to be off cheaper. No, you have to treat your suppliers as your friends, as part of your system. So we're at 5 now. There are 2 left. One of them is society. So your decisions as a company have to positively impact society. And the 7th is the environment. So basically, what I tried to do with the beneficial to all stakeholders model was to have a strategic tool that would allow us, before making a strategic decision in our business, to tick 7 boxes. Does it have a positive impact on us as shareholder? Does it have a positive impact on employees, on their families, on our suppliers, on our customers, on society, and on the environment? And if you can say yes 7 times, everybody's going to be happy with the fact that you made that decision. So that makes for a sustainable business.
I love that model. I wish I knew about it when we were writing Super Shifts, because within the book, one of the things, again, I find one of the reasons why I love our conversations, I find you and I have a lot of similarities in our thinking, just very different approaches. But within there, it's all about positive sum outcomes. How do you consider all shareholders or stakeholders rather, including nature, is how I framed it up. Because of the fact that we live in symbiosis in my at least in my opinion, and our models, to your point, and something that I've seen as well, is that these are just unsustainable models all around. And it's really what I love particularly about talking to you is I don't know enough about energy for me to even speak well about it in at dinner conversations. So it's just even knowing some of the business modeling around it, the power dynamics that occur. It's pretty fascinating. Let's talk. I want to pull on that thread of natural ecosystems a little bit more. And at least from your perspective, what do you think that we can learn from these natural ecosystems when we're designing future-proof energy solutions?
I love the question. I think this is right at the heart of what I'm dedicating myself to. We are very much conditioned to think in terms of silver bullet solutions.
Mm-hmm.
So, whether you're talking about health or living environments or energy, people have a tendency to be very hopeful and put a lot of trust in, oh, this and this particular technology is going to solve it all for us.
Mm.
And I don't believe that. And in energy, I've heard so many people, oh yeah, it's going to be nuclear fusion. Oh yeah, it's going to be, I don't know what, thorium. Oh yeah, it's going to be the sun. It's going to be it's all going to be photovoltaic panels. Or, oh yeah, no, by now it's batteries. Everybody's talking storage these days. Or one that I've heard a lot. Yes, the next generation. The kids now, they're so smart. They're going to solve it all, which basically says, well, I made a mess. My kids will clean it up. If you go into nature, the natural tendency of every natural system, of every ecosystem, is diversification.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a lawn, you'll have to take all kinds of measures to keep it a lawn. With one type of grass growing there that has to be perfectly green, just a little bit greener than the neighbors. And it's horrible. I mean, ecologically, you're looking at a desert. It provides no food, it provides no shelter, it provides nothing. It's poor. And if you forget to mow your lawn and maintain it and throw all kinds of fertilizers on it, and you're going to look at it in a few weeks' time, you're going to see diversification. And after a year, it's going to be, all kinds of bushes and it's going to be a rather rich ecosystem. And after 8 years, it's going to be a forest. And I love that. It basically tells us that if you go to nature, it tells you that if there'd be a silver bullet, it would be called diversity. So the better we design our systems, and this is not only for energy, but the better we design our systems to accommodate the highest form of diversity that we can imagine, the more resilient and self-balancing they will be.
Yeah, it's really interesting to know. I mean, I live here in the US where my neighbors all love to have their lawns precisely manicured, I will say. What I've been really pondering has been, I am wondering if there's ecological memory that we have, knowing that our ancestors were farmers.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a need to want, at least here, and again, this is just something that I've been thinking about. There's a need to want to tend, or like there almost that pull to tend to something, but in a way that is almost destructive. But it's almost like you can't let go of it. And I just wonder if that's one of the reasons why, besides really good marketing, the agricultural blueprint was really solidified, I'll say, in the early 1900s here in the United States, well, even late 1800s, when it came to fertilizers and pesticides. But I feel like there's this need to still want to tend to the earth, but it's almost like we've forgotten how to do it. And almost like a robot that needs to be rebooted, or a computer that needs to be rebooted. It's just cycling through. And I almost view lawn care in that way. I know I'm going to get a lot of slack for that from listeners, but that is okay. Talk to me a little bit about, so as we think about biodiversity within nature, the fact that nature will naturally start to create biodiversity if left to its own devices. What lessons can we learn in infrastructure, not only just in energy systems, but are there lessons and are there ways in which we can model, say, a distributed energy system that isn't like crazy expensive or super complex, but that can really be modeled after a natural system?
Another beautiful question. So thank you so much, and also for the comparisons that you make. Because yes, and let me actually receive a good chunk of the slap that you're going to get from your listeners for the comments that you made on the lawns, because or on lawn care, because I'm of the same school by now. I got really interested in permaculture and in agroforestry. I have a tiny garden here in Rotterdam, which I counted last year. I think I had 107 different types of plants.
Did you really?
Yeah. And it's amazing because it provides, and it's self-balancing by now, and it's become an oasis, which also means that it created its own tiny aquifer underneath, which means that if there's a heat wave, and we have some of them by now due to global warming, you're going to see that the neighbors' gardens are dead and extremely hot. And this is actually a nice place. It really is. And I learn a lot from that, and by a lot of it has to do with improving the ability to trust nature. Because what's going to happen if you're going to turn a lawn into a forest is that at first it's going to bug you, literally, and it's going to irritate you, and you're going to, yeah, but now this and this particular plant is growing there and I don't want it there because because it's going all over the place and it's making life miserable for me. Or, oh, I have snails, or I have this pest, or I have this, the thing is, if the soil is that poor, what we consider to be irritating or a pest is actually the medicine for the soil. You'll have to let that happen. I had terrible amounts of snails in the first 2 years of transforming my garden into permaculture. You hardly have any now. I do have some, but they're not a nuisance. And of course, they eat some stuff, but never all of it, because it's a self-balancing system. So, and that's so beautiful. And I only started this transformation 5 years ago. So prior to that, my garden was mostly tiles, rock. It was nothing. It was a desert. And I literally started. And the thing is, we want to till so much. We want to stick our shovel into the soil and change things. And I tried so much with so many different kinds of plants. And at some point I had to learn, okay, so the soil that I have is not ready or not willing to accept this in this plant. So yes, of course, in my mind, I would have loved to have it, but it's not going to thrive here. So why enforce that onto that little bit of land? Why not see what the soil itself wants to give? And there was this one point that I found that really funny, because I have this pile of compost. We threw all kinds of stuff there, all the veggie cuttings and stuff that we had in our kitchen. And I was composting from there onto my garden. And at some point, something started to grow there. I thought, what is it? What is it? And I I had this app, which is like, kind of a Shazam-like app for plants where you take a picture of a plant and it will recognize it. And it was lilies. And I thought, how did I end up? I never planted lilies. And they literally came out of the compost because apparently we threw flowers on it also, when you get a bouquet for somebody's birthday or whatever. And so suddenly the soil started to give lilies, and now it's thriving with lilies. It's beautiful. So, yeah.
That's amazing. I would love a photo of your garden, because it's, yeah, I mean, it sounds like, I think, I don't want to speak for anyone else. I know that, at least for me, I've started to dabble in permaculture, and there has to be a commitment in the family, and there has to be almost a commitment within the area. And I only say that because we used to have bees, and our sometimes our bees would last, sometimes they would not, but depending on what neighbors have on their yards, I mean, that bees can travel, I believe, up to 3 miles, 3 or 4 miles, and so some of that just ends up back within your ecosystem. So it's yeah, no, it's really interesting, and I'm always fascinated how people end up getting into permaculture, and it sounds like you have something magical growing in your backyard, which I'm not surprised about, by the way.
So yes, it is magical, but it's not mine. It is its own, and that's what makes it magical.
Well said. Well said. I want to move to the future a little bit and just ask, you bring up the concept of Internet of Energy. And I would love for you to not only define that, but also share with listeners, when you came up with that concept, what did you first envision, and what were some of those assumptions that you had? And what are some of those assumptions? Are there ones that have really stood the test of time, others that you've had to revisit? Just walk us through that a little bit.
Yeah, so of course it started with a hypothesis. So the Internet of Energy, the IOE, I started with that term in 2015. And I just quit my previous company at that time. And I had worked on foundational layers for distributed energy systems, and also, and more fundamentally, I think, an attempt to shift the economics of energy. Because, if as long as we have a volume-based model, somebody's going to be incentivized to sell you as much as they can, while we'll have to have a value-based model where you're going to seek not a maximum but an optimum. And one of the movements that I witnessed at that time, starting at that time actually, that really reinforced that belief that I had, was the rise of renewable energy technologies. So early on, I mean, photovoltaic panels have been around since the 80s, something like that. But they really picked up around, what is it, 15, 18 years ago, something like that. And so I witnessed that, and I thought, if this is going to enable for regular users like you and me to generate at least a part of the energy that we need on our own rooftops, why would we require to send that amount of energy through a meter to a grid, onto a national grid, where somebody's going to put a price on it and then sell it back to me? Why? If I'd have a garden and I want to eat, I don't know what, lettuce, and I take it out of my garden, I bring it to my kitchen, I chop it up, I eat it. But with energy, the rule seems to be, you're going to bring that lettuce via the kitchen, through the front door, through a meter, then it's going to go on to some national distribution system, then somebody's going to price it, somebody's going to tax you for it, somebody's going to look at it and say, oh yeah, this is a good bit of lettuce or not, and then they're going to send it back to you, and then it's going to come through your front door, you'll have paid for it, and then you can put it on your own kitchen top and eat it. Why? It makes no sense. And what I saw was, in internet, we had this concept of components moving to the edge. Everything became more and more decentralized. Computing power became more and more decentralized. Storage became more and more decentralized. That allowed us as internet users to become prosumers rather than consumers. And I thought, so with energy, we're going to have the same thing at that time. And indeed, we do. If you look at storage being widely available now for everybody, energy generation being widely available, technologies expanding, changing, shifting, new flavors and tastes coming on the market. It's good. I love that. The only thing that did not happen was an actual underpinning design for the energy system to allow for all these edge components to function together, which literally means if there's going to be a blackout in some region and I'm there with my solar panels, I'm going to be in the blackout.
Right.
No power for me. I have my own. I have a 75 kilowatt hour battery in front of my house with wheels under it. Why am I not allowed to use it? It's a buffer. I have the ability to collect heat on my rooftop and turn that into hot water and feed my central heating system with that. Why am I not allowed to do that? So I really thought the essence of the Internet of Energy is not so much that everything is digitalized. The essence of the Internet of Energy is that everything that can function on the edge actually is allowed to function on the edge, which means that my solar panels, my heat pump, my heating system, my batteries, my whatever, are allowed to function together with the intent to create a partial balance, which means that I'll still be on grid, but I'm going to use the grid not as the default setting. I'm going to use it as the backup. So if there's a deficit, either a plus or a minus, I generate more than I need, or I need more than I generate, that's where the grid comes in. And so you get this self-balancing system, and it basically functions like, some old people still remember BitTorrent. If you download a video clip there, or a song, or a movie or whatever, it would never be one peer to one peer exchanging the entire file. Actually, the file that you're going to download is chopped up into all these little bits, and you download bits and pieces from all kinds of different peers at the same time, and then they're compiled back together as that one movie that you wanted to watch. With energy, we can do the same thing as packetization. So you packetize basically the needs that you have in the moment, and you get them from anywhere. And what is anywhere? Anywhere is the optimum. So closer by is easier, cheaper, better. Choose for that. So basically what I'm involved in right now is designing the fundamental rules, the fundamental algorithms that allow local energy assets to optimally function with each other, so that if there's a blackout, it's probably going to hit you for 20%, not for 100. And still you as neighbors can exchange all kinds of stuff together, which means that you create local resilience, local ownership. So there's on a conceptual level, there's been a lot of work and a lot of thought being put into the IOE. And by now we're actually organizing hackathons and bringing people together that are building this stuff and starting to set up this open source repository for standards and protocols and knowledge and insights and data and all kinds of stuff. And yeah, it's starting to grow. It's becoming a thing.
That's amazing. When I think about just the vulnerability of infrastructure around energy, particularly here in the US, it would be devastating to the entire country, the way that it's structured right now. So I love the work that you and your colleagues have been doing and have been following it since we met in March. So it's been really fun to see some of the things that you guys are starting to pull together as you're moving towards this model, or helping us, I should say, move towards this model. Because I really, at least for me, I'm a firm believer in communal resilience and getting us moving in that direction, not only just around energy infrastructure, but in other ways as well. So, all right, as we're wrapping up, I was trying to think about, as we head into the future, like Arash, if you had to forecast it's let's say 10 years from now. So it's 2035. If you had to forecast an energy mindset that you would want humanity to have in 10 years in one sentence.
Oh my God.
Yeah. What would it be? All right. If you need 2 sentences, that's fine.
35, one sentence, what I would want the mindset of humanity to be with regards to energy.
Did I stump you?
No, because you did send me the question in advance. Is that a spoiler?
No. I mean,
so in 2035, we all deeply know and understand that energy is everywhere, that it is not for someone to own or take, and that the essence of energy is flow, and flow comes through access, and flow brings potential for value creation. So if we can get together to ameliorate flow of energy among all of us and all our assets, all our devices, and regard that as one mycelial ecosystem of billions of exchange points trying to achieve balance with one another on a moment-to-moment basis, then that would be the optimal energy system. And we have 13.5 billion years of history with that system that we can draw from.
Arash, that's beautiful. Thank you for that. And thank you for being on the show. Where can people find you, by the way?
Mostly in the Netherlands, and sometimes not. You can find me on unify.energy, and you can find our events at synergyhack.org. So that's where we do the Synergy Hackathon. Synergy means together being more than the sum of our parts, which is the essence. We're hosting a hackathon in a week and a half, and we're doing a few more in the coming year. And we're doing them together with music festivals, which is awesome because a festival is a pop-up city. You build it up for a weekend and then you break it down again. But everything that is in that festival actually has to have the functionality of a city. There has to be energy, there has to be data, there has to be security, safety, culture, sense of belonging, all these other things. And that provides such an excellent ground for rapid prototyping and for applying new ideas and models and technologies in a safe environment where you wouldn't be allowed to do that at that level in a built environment like a city or so. So that's why we work with festivals and also because festivals are fun. So synergyhack.org, and it's such amazing work because we work with inspiring people, with people that are involved in music, with people that are involved with artists. So it's this whole Renaissance kind of vibe, everything connected to everything and just doing cool stuff together. So you're all invited.
Well, thank you. And if you ever want to bring that Renaissance energy over to Boston or Providence, let's find a way to do it together because that would be amazing. And I feel like it's needed.
Absolutely. So Synergy is probably going to be going international and coming, and actually it's going to be in a few continents. So yeah.
Love it. Arash, thanks so much for the time.
Thank you so much, Ja-Nae. Thank you. And see you.
See you.
Thanks for listening to the podcast. You can find us on all the major podcast platforms and at www.janae.io, as well as on YouTube under Ja-Nae Duane. See you next time.